Part 62. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 614. In the real world, everything is as usual. Those best friends drank too much and are still sound asleep, with Zhang Shenkei's sleep talk and Wei Bowen's teeth grinding coming from time to time. On the contrary, Dong Fangyuking and his wife are more peaceful. Woof woof. But as if he noticed Wang Ling waking up, Xiao He suddenly came out of the kennel, barked twice, and wagged his tail at Wang Ling, as if he was having fun. Wang Ling casually touched the dog's head. Go to sleep. My woo. With a low groan, Xiao He did as Wang Ling said and got into the kennel again, but the front half of his body lay out and looked at Wang Ling for a while before closing his eyes. Wang Ling smiled and shook his head. Without thinking much, he turned over and fell asleep. The next day, it seemed that they had decided to go to the bank for internship. Zhang Shenkei and Wei Bowen got up early in the morning, actually it was almost noon. After feeling confused, they picked up their mobile phones one after another and made a call to their work unit. Resign. In fact, the two of them had been holding back on this resignation plan for a long time, and now they finally found the opportunity, not to mention how happy they were. The two of them were temporary workers in the company, and they were the first choice during layoffs. Of course, there were no surprises in the process of resigning, and the leader readily agreed. Although this was convenient, after working for such a long time, there was no attempt to persuade him to stay when he resigned. The two of them felt a little awkward and complained after hanging up the phone. However, it didn't take long for them to adjust their mentality. At noon, the five of them went out to eat something together. Then they went to their unit together, packed up all the personal belongings left there, and transported them back to school. That was it. I have no worries and officially broke away from all relations with the unit. As for the rest of the time, when these people get together, they play crazily and turn on the decadent mode to their heart's content. After all, people from the bank are coming tomorrow, and the internship means that you have entered the society in advance. You have to spend half a year at work. It is difficult to be as free and dissolute as you were when you were a student. Now, of course, you have to seize all the time for entertainment. And when we were having fun, time always felt like it was passing too fast, and it was almost late at night in the blink of an eye. After drinking beer, a bag of peanuts, and a few skewers, they fell asleep again. Wang Ling still chose to enter the world of Red Alert, and the two worlds were not delayed by the news of the internship. However, on this day, in the Red Alert world, there was still not much fighting in the Holy City war zone. The Yuri base was still being expanded, and the coalition forces were still rushing to control the Kirov airship. On the other hand, the Allies would often fly out 3 or 2 invader fighter jets to attack Yuri's troops. At the beginning, the intruder fighter planes focused on the tanks in the tank bunkers in Yuri's base. They were dispatched several times and indeed destroyed the targets, but none of the dispatched fighters could come back. Later, the Allies changed their target and bombed the slave mine of Yuri's troops. Their losses were immediately reduced. They sent out several bombings in a row until night, and finally succeeded in blowing up a slave mine and 5 slaves. They rebelled instantly, but were immediately annihilated by the Yuri tanks defending on the side. During this period, the coalition forces were naturally making preparations. By night, a total of 8 Kirov airships had been built, nearly twice as many as during normal operations. After the 8 Kirov airships came out, because the marching speed was too slow, they were sent out directly after the assembly was completed, and they rushed on the road first to save some time. But Wang Ling and the others still stood still. The tank factory even temporarily made 3 Rhino tanks and entrusted them to Wang Ling. These 3 Rhino tanks, to put it bluntly, are actually cannon fodder. On the mountain road leading to Yuri's base on the mountainside, there is a dangerous section that is directly exposed to the peripheral firepower of Yuri's base. Wang Ling and the others are attacking from below. They can't reach Yuri base, but the defense force of Yuri base can make them a target. Although it is said that when there is a war, there are sacrifices, but Wang Ling did not want his men to be used as targets, so he used these 3 Rhino tanks to attract firepower. After the Rhino tanks were ready, Wang Ling ordered 2 elite Apocalypse tanks, 2 elite Rhino tanks to escort, 4 ungraded Apocalypse tanks, 4 ungraded Rhino tanks, 4 ungraded Phantom tanks to follow, and 6 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles of different levels and 29 mobilization soldiers of different levels were temporarily commanded by Hu Ben, replacing Sun De. After the ordering of troops was completed, Wang Ling and others did not set off immediately. Instead, they seized the time and rested. There is a psychic detector in Yuri base. All enemy units, as long as their targets are within the detection range, will be marked on the electronic map of Yuri base. Therefore, sneak attacks and night attacks are meaningless. It is better to have a good rest. Refresh yourself enough and attack again during the day. After all this was done, Wang Ling stretched and returned to the real world naturally. This day was not so leisurely in the real world, because the bank staff had already arrived. At about 8 o'clock in the morning, after breakfast, Wang Ling and the other 5 people went to their respective classrooms in accordance with their professions. Not long after they stayed, they saw a woman wearing a white shirt walking into the classroom. This man wears a nameplate with the name of the bank and seat on it. He wears glasses and has a good face. He is about 30 years old, with a ponytail and a slight smile on his mouth. No need to ask, this person is the bank's recruitment staff, the attire is too obvious. The recruiter came to the classroom, first checked his identity and found that he was not in the wrong room, and then introduced himself with a smile. It can be seen from the introduction that this person's name is Li Qiangwei, who is responsible for recruiting workers. He briefly described the history of the bank, which sounded quite reliable. After she finished her brief introduction, someone in the classroom immediately asked about food, clothing, housing, and transportation. Li Qiangwei's answer was, when working in a bank, it is natural to dress uniformly. For someone like me, leather shoes, white shirt, formal suit and tie. It's standard clothing. We don't have a staff dormitory, but we found a separate apartment for you, which is more than 20 minutes away from the unit. It's a 5-minute walk to the subway entrance, and there's an open restaurant next to it, which is very convenient. Sounds good. It seems okay. This answer actually touched the hearts of many people. Many people nodded silently and were optimistic about this internship. Later, several students asked about internships, focusing on salary. Li Qiangwei's answers were always normal. For example, her job was outbound customer service, and her working hours were from 9 to 6, with an hour in between. During lunch and break time, the salary is about 2,000 to 4,000, depending on individual performance and so on. After asking questions for a period of time, the students fell silent, and no more good questions came to mind for a while. Do you have any other questions? Just ask them once and for all, because your internship lasts for half a year, Li Qiangwei asked with a smile. After all the students glanced at each other, a girl suddenly stood up and asked, according to our last class of seniors, many jobs that look good are actually very low paying. There is no high commitment, and you often work overtime without any overtime pay. I would like to ask, does the position you mentioned also have this problem? Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 615. Is there still such a thing? Oh my God, it sounds like such a good career, but is it just a trap? Fortunately, someone asked, otherwise we might have been sold to someone else and still have to help count the money. This group of students is very sensitive to internship matters. Previously, Director Zhang Zhuofo and Li Qianggui jointly described a very beautiful career with very generous remuneration in all aspects, which made many students yearn for it. However, when this girl brought up something like an unspoken rule in public, many people were immediately shocked and started muttering. Even Wang Ling looked at the girl in surprise. Although his concerns were not from the same angle as what the girl said, among the group of students who had been deceived, there was finally a rational one. Such a tricky question and the reaction of a group of students seemed to be somewhat beyond Li Qianggui's expectations. She was embarrassed and speechless on the spot. However, she is a professional recruiter after all, so she quickly responded, "Dear students, don't forget, this is an internship and a job, not a place for enjoyment. You can just get it if you have fun every day. It is impossible to get a high salary, unless the leader is your relative. Our seat positions also have work requirements. If you fail to meet the requirements every day, your team leader will ask you if you want to work overtime. This does not mean that you will be paid for overtime work. The bank did it, but to complete your mission." A group of students were obviously not very interested in this statement, and no one responded. Li Qianggui did not feel embarrassed and continued, "In addition, in our agent position, the salary is not fixed. In addition to perfect attendance every month, your daily performance and tasks will also affect your salary, and even there is also a complex calculation formula that experienced old employees can use to calculate their own wages. Therefore, overtime work does not mean that there is no overtime pay. The tasks you complete overtime, or tasks that are overfulfilled, will be counted towards your salary. It's in the salary. In our position, many people even take the initiative to work overtime in order to get more salary. There is no need to work overtime. That's it." After hearing what she said, a group of students seemed to have gradually lowered their guard. But in the end, Li Qianggui dropped another king. "Of course, if you complete all the tasks and work overtime or not, that's all your decision. There was once someone in our position. After completing the task, the team leader asked she didn't want to work overtime, and she was told that she didn't want to work overtime. The team leader asked again, 'Don't you want the salary to be higher?' They replied, 'These are high enough, and there is no need to work overtime to get more salary, so, this job is actually very flexible, as long as you complete the task, you are the boss.' Ha ha ha." A group of very playful students, a simple joke caused a burst of laughter, and in the laughter, many people have put aside their grudges and gradually accepted this internship position. However, Wang Ling was always frowning. From Li Qianggui's words, he always felt that something was wrong, as if there was some deception hidden there. However, after all, he was very unfamiliar with this job, and he didn't know what was wrong for a while. Afterwards, Li Qianggui asked several times if she had any other questions, but like Wang Ling, this group of people had never been exposed to this job after all. They were confused and didn't know where to start, so no one asked any more. "What? Now that there are no questions, the interview will begin soon. After all, this link is just an internship, so it is generally simple." A group of 10 people sit alone in a classroom, and a bank employee in front of them asks some questions individually. In Wang Ling's classroom, the interviewer was a gentle-looking elder sister. Because of her seat, the first person asked was Dongfang Yuking. "What's your name?" "Dongfang Yuking. That's a nice name. Have you done any other jobs before?" "I have no work experience." "Then do you want to come here for an internship?" Think. These questions are also very simple. They are not as serious as imagined, but just like chatter. Subsequently, Zhang Shenkai and Wei Bowen also passed the interview one after another, followed by Wang Ling. "What's your name?" "Wang Ling." "What a handsome young man. Have you done any other jobs before?" "Did it?" "What kind of job?" "Do not want to tell you." The interviews of the other three went very smoothly. The conversation was harmonious, and the interviewer always had a gentle smile on his face. But when Wang Ling came here, the heat's tough tone seemed to come from the army, which made the interviewer feel a little uncomfortable for a while. However, Wang Ling was very far away from him and was not very cooperative at all. As a result, the interviewer's face froze after hearing this answer. In fact, Wang Ling did not say anything nonsense. In addition to entertainment, what he did in the Red Alert world seemed to be an alternative profession, but it couldn't be exposed. But the interviewer didn't know that. He thought Wang Ling was deliberately playing tricks on her, with a look of embarrassment and displeasure on his face. However, she quickly recovered and continued to ask, "Then do you want to come to our unit for an internship?" This time, Wang Ling was even more disrespectful and answered matter-of-factly, "I don't think much about it." The interviewer was stunned, and other students in the classroom also widened their eyes. To be honest, it cannot be said that there are not many people who say they don't really want to go to the company they are interviewing for during the interview, but they are rare. At least the interviewer has never encountered them, and he didn't expect that she would encounter them today. Even if you really don't want to go because the school is forcing you, then you have to be tactful, right? But it was better for Wang Ling to tell the truth directly. The scene was not to mention embarrassing. Several classmates in the back row snickered, already labeling Wang Ling as sincere or silly. After being embarrassed for a while, the interviewer seemed a little anxious and asked, "You don't want to go? Are there any internships that are better than our position?" Wang Ling shook his head and said bluntly, "I don't know." "Then if you haven't found a satisfactory position, will you still be an intern?" When she said this, the interviewer was even a little dissatisfied, and her tone was somewhat questioning. In her heart, Wang Ling was simply ignorant and pretentious. But Wang Ling didn't seem to hear what she meant, and said frankly, "At worst, I won't go to the unified internship." He really doesn't have a good impression of this internship position. Besides, he has his own life cycle now and doesn't want the internship to interfere with him. He doesn't care at all whether he can pass the interview. Of course, he still didn't say anything later. He said that he would not go to the unified internship, but he could find a position to participate in the internship by himself and bypass the school. At least part of his salary would not be deducted. However, before he could say these words, a figure suddenly walked in from the door of the classroom. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 616. This man was 1.8 meters tall and thick, with dark skin, stubble on his face, and a fierce look in his eyes. Although not all teachers and school leaders knew each other in the school, at least Wang Ling had seen this person before, and he was one of the school's leaders. I don't know if he came specifically to eavesdrop on the interview, or if he just happened to be passing by. In short, after hearing Wang Ling's answer, he rushed in immediately. It was obvious that the visitor was evil. Sure enough, after the school leader came in, he glanced directly at the students in the classroom. Finally, his eyes paused for a moment on Wang Ling. After staring at him for a few times, he said, "I'm warning you, everyone has to go to the internship. Don't do anything special by blowing me up, otherwise you won't get your diploma, and don't blame the school." Having a tough attitude towards the school students is really in line with the school leadership's approach, but after saying these words, most of the students in the classroom frowned and felt very unhappy. Wang Ling was even more secretly annoyed. Although he said this to the entire classroom, he was obviously referring to Sang Huai and focused on Wang Ling. But who is Wang Ling? In the real world, he is just a poor student, but in another world, he dares to confront even the commander of the Allied forces and even the commander-in-chief. How can he endure such a tone when being targeted? However, he didn't go too far. He just focused his eyes, and a strong mental pressure was suddenly released, accurately covering the school leader, and even the aftermath deliberately affected the interviewer. Buzz. Although he travels back and forth between the two worlds, Wang Ling still clearly distinguishes the identity of the two worlds. In the real world, he rarely uses mental power to coerce. During this period, under the training of the Red Alert world, his spiritual power is a bit stronger, and the coercive effect is more obvious and amazing. Under his shroud, the famous school leader's mind instantly buzzed, and the scene in his subconscious suddenly transformed into a battlefield. Everywhere was filled with the sound of gunfire and cannons, and fire snakes were raging, passing by him. The bystanders fell one after another, with fistfuls of blood spilled, and lives harvested one by one, as if it would be his turn next. Wang Ling's mental power was honed on the battlefield, and his mental pressure was naturally biased towards the battlefield fear type. This kind of coercion would have no effect on a veteran like Sun Dehu in the Red Alert world except causing tension. But how many people have fought in the real world? The school leader was suddenly exposed to such an environment, and the psychological impact made him tremble with fear. Is this the end? But it's more than that. This is just the coercive effect of mental power a few months ago. After this period of training, Wang Ling's mental power has been strengthened a bit. Under his deliberate release, the battlefield in the subconscious mind of the school leaders suddenly stopped again, but the people who had died in the battle stood up staggeringly one by one, like zombies, and all moved closer to him. Just as those walking corpses were getting closer and closer to him, Wang Ling cleverly removed the mental pressure, and the school leader's mind instantly returned to clarity. However, after being frightened like this, his face turned extremely pale, with strong fear on his face. While trembling, he bumped into the classroom door with a bang, then turned around and ran out without caring about anything else. The classroom gives people a feeling of fleeing, as if there is some wild beast in the classroom. One moment he was menacingly threatening the students in the entire classroom, and the next moment he ran out in such a panic. This sudden change confused all the students. They were not exposed to that mental pressure, but they didn't know what the school leader had just experienced. Hoo-hoo. Of course, not only the school leader, but also the interviewer was affected. Fortunately, what she experienced was just the aftermath of some mental pressure deliberately spread by Wang Ling, and the effect was far less than the direct impact. The school leader was under this pressure, but just the aftermath had already made her really scared for a while, with some trembling in her breathing. I suffered this fright for no reason, but the interviewer had no idea where the fear came from. After she calmed down, she subconsciously looked at Wang Ling, with a hint of suspicion in her heart that this had something to do with Wang Ling. However, she had no idea why she was panicking just now. She even thought it was an illusion. She glanced at Wang Ling a few times, then looked back at the classroom door, and shook her head in confusion, with no intention of delving into the matter. The interview with Wang Ling came to an end with the interruption from the school leader. The results of the interview will not be announced immediately. Then the interviewer returns to his original state of mind and continues to interview other students later. Even the questions asked are almost the same. It was not until all 10 people were interviewed that they returned to the original classroom, and the interviews of other groups also ended. A group of people waited in the classroom for a while. During this period, Director Zhang Zhuofu and several instructors also came over to check the situation, but they did not see the famous school leader just now. Afterwards, Li Qianggui finally walked into the classroom with a list and read out the candidates who had passed the interview. Among them, Wang Ling's 3 roommates, including Sun Tongtong, all successfully passed, except Wang Ling. In fact, this so-called interview is actually just a survey. As long as the interviewer expresses his desire to do an internship as an agent, the interview can be passed. It can be said to be very simple. But Wang Ling was so stubborn that he openly contradicted the interviewer and even said he didn't really want to take this position. Of course, he wouldn't be able to pass the interview. Of course, just to be on the safe side, Li Qianggui also gave those who failed to pass one last chance, that is, all the students who regretted it were gathered in a classroom for a talk. As long as their attitudes were correct, they would be allowed to pass. Zhang Shenke and others originally wanted to intern together. During this period, they had been urging Wang Ling to follow, but Wang Ling smiled lightly and shook his head, "Forget it." Yes, he was not looking forward to this internship. He didn't have to go. Since he failed the interview, there was no need to force anything. He voluntarily gave up this last opportunity, which meant that Wang Ling would not be on the list for this round of internship. Those students who passed the interview were directly told that they would receive a week-long training in a unified lecture theater tomorrow, while those who failed the interview were directly warned by Director Zhang Zhuofa that they would have to go to internship sooner or later. After this round, there will be another round. After the warnings and arrangements were completed, this special recruitment was finally over. These experiences before the internship were actually experienced by me personally, but the process was slightly modified and exaggerated. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 617. No, I don't understand. What are you thinking? Go to a bank for an internship. What other internship position can be better than this? Why don't you go? That's right, and if we all go, we can live together and take care of each other. You stay alone while we go, leaving you alone. Aren't you alone? Go back to the director and the bank recruiter to see if they can recruit more people. Stop being so stubborn and let's go together. After the meeting, Wang Ling and the other two left the classroom, and on their way to the dormitory, the roommates had been persuading Wang Ling and wanted to get him to go for internship together. However, when they said he was fat, he was really out of breath, and when they said he was stubborn, he was really stubborn. After listening to so many words from them, Wang Ling became a little impatient. Aren't you annoying? This internship, I don't want to go. If I'm not selected, I'm not selected. What's the big deal? Stop trying to persuade me, it's useless. When you are stable in the capital, I'll just go and see you more. You really have nothing to say. The stones in the pit are so smelly and hard. Your brain circuit is really different from ordinary people. There's really nothing we can do against you. They have already made their stance clear, and they really have nothing to say to them. Fortunately, there is still a week of training before officially going to the capital, and these best friends can only cherish this time. The training will not start until tomorrow. I naturally took some time off after the meeting today. Apart from buying a few notebooks and carbon pens in advance, I naturally stayed in the dormitory the rest of the time and continued to have fun. Before I knew it, it was here again. Night. After all, there was training tomorrow, so Zhang Shenke and the others didn't stay up too late. They went to bed before 12 o'clock, but they didn't go to sleep immediately. Instead, they each held their mobile phones. Wang Ling was lying on the bed, looking at the upper bunk. After being stunned for a long time, he sighed, closed his eyes, and re-entered the world of Red Alert, sleeping until dawn. After several days of continuous preparation, on this day, the relative stability of the Holy City War Zone was about to be broken, because Wang Ling woke up. After the preparations were completed, he asked all the selected mobilization troops to enter the predetermined anti-aircraft tracked vehicles. Following, other Rhino tanks and the Apocalypse tank and the Phantom tank rushed towards the hilly area together. Last night, the 8 Kirov airships had already flown out of the base in advance due to their poor maneuverability and slow speed. After spending the whole night, they were now gradually approaching the hilly area. And their target, the Yuri base on the mountainside, is still quite a distance away. At the speed of the Kirov airship, it will take a long time to reach it. Taking advantage of this time, the offensive team led by Wang Ling could reach the predetermined position and wait in advance. On the whole, the Apocalypse tank was slowing down this attacking team. Under the restrictions of Wang Ling, other tanks and vehicles all slowed down and waited for the Apocalypse tank. Of course, no matter how slow it is still faster than the Kirov airship. After marching for nearly 2 hours, the attacking team has arrived at the foot of the mountain. Wang Ling got out of the car and took a special look at the direction of Yuri's base at the foot of the mountain. He checked the road conditions on the mountain road and found no large traces of Yuri's troops. Then he felt relieved, got into the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, and continued marching. The mountain road is rugged and winding, but this is not a problem for the tank convoy. The rolling tracks can easily control the mountain road. The entire offensive team stepped up the mountain road in an orderly manner and maintained a constant speed. This section of the mountain road is relatively narrow overall, but there are also some areas that are relatively wide, and there are even mines in some wide areas. After traveling on the mountain road for a while, the attacking team arrived at such a vast area, where a group of Yuri troops were stationed to guard 2 slave mines. Wang Ling and the others' main target was Yuri's base on the mountainside. They had to hurry up and reach the designated location before the Kirov airship. Of course, they would not specifically attack Yuri's slave mine. However, we all came here along the way, and if we collided head-on, how could there be no reason not to fight? Under Wang Ling's order, the entire team stopped temporarily. He stepped off the tracked vehicle alone and came to the firing range. He raised his gun and killed the psychic troops. He also destroyed all the surrounding tornado tanks and gate tanks and cleared them away. This group of Yuri troops stationed there. Subsequently, several ungraded Apocalypse tanks, Rhino tanks, and Phantom tanks were dispatched together, coupled with Wang Ling's long-range firepower. Under the strong attack, the 2 slave mines were completely blown up in a matter of seconds. Wang Ling does need more experience in the military. With his personal firepower, he can kill the 2 slave mines remotely, but that will waste time after all. After killing the 2 slave mines, Wang Ling climbed into the anti-aircraft crawler without stopping, and the entire attacking team continued to move forward. As for the slaves who had been rescued and changed their stance, Wang Ling now had no extra time to arrange for anti-aircraft crawler vehicles to pick them up, so he simply assigned them to walk to the Holy City Coalition base. And with their attacking team in check, Yuri's base probably won't be able to spare any extra troops to hunt down the slaves alone. Maintaining the previous speed and marching for nearly half an hour, Wang Ling and the others finally arrived at the most dangerous area. This section of the road is adjacent to Yuri base on the mountainside and scattered under the nearby mountain wall. Due to the winding nature of the mountain road, it is necessary to continue for a distance and go around 2 corners before attacking Yuri base head-on. However, Yuri's base's peripheral firepower happened to cover this section of the road, and it was very dangerous to march on it. After estimating the scope of this area and about to enter, Wang Ling ordered the team to stop alone and went out to observe the situation. On the edge of Yuri's base, there are 3 Getter cannons and 2 tank bunkers, in which a Getter tank and a Tornado tank are stationed. These are powerful threats to the attacking team. However, luckily among misfortunes, there are no mind control towers, mind control vehicles, or mind troops in this fringe area. Without the threat of mind control, there is naturally more certainty in the charge. After observing, Wang Ling hurriedly adjusted the position of the team. Of the 3 cannon fodder Rhino tanks, 1 was placed at the front, 1 was in the middle, close to the cliff, and the last one was at the back, attracting the firepower of Yuri's base evenly. After the deployment was completed, Wang Ling got into the anti-aircraft tracked vehicle and gave the order to rush through the radio. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Boom. Boom. And with the intrusion of the first Rhino tank, the defensive forces in the edge area really opened fire. Several jet cannons turned around and opened fire one after another. Another jet tank and a tornado tank were brought in to concentrate fire and bombardment. The leading Rhino tank. It will take some time to kill the Rhino tank with only the firepower of the getter cannon, but the tornado tank is a bit tricky. After several shots in succession, combined with other getter cannons, the Rhino tank can be killed before the Rhino tank can break through this area. After successfully destroying it, the defensive firepower randomly selected targets for attack. All this is as Wang Ling expected. If this trend continues, the attacking team may be able to rush through this dangerous area at a very small cost, and even at least one of the cannon fodder Rhino tanks may be left behind. However, the situation on the battlefield suddenly changed, and the battle situation changed too quickly. Just as the offensive team rushed here, two magneto-electric tanks rushed over from Yuri's base on the mountainside. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 618. Damn guy. While the attacking team was rushing through this dangerous section of road, Wang Ling was of course always observing the electronic video. When he saw the movements of the two magneto-electric tanks, he couldn't help but change his face and curse. It's this magneto-electric tank again. When playing games, I often suffer from magneto-electric tanks. I didn't expect that in this red alert world, magneto-electric tanks are still so annoying. Originally, according to Wang Ling's idea and arrangement, the attack team rushed through this section without much loss. However, the plan could not keep up with the changes. Who would have thought that Yuri base did not follow the routine and separated it a long way? The magneto-electric tanks have been mobilized, and now we are in trouble. Buzz. As expected, these magneto-electric tanks were not here for fun. After they were in place, they took action from a long distance away. One forcefully absorbed the cannon fodder Rhino tank arranged by Wang Ling in the center, and the other aiming at a nearby anti-aircraft crawler vehicle. It was forcibly sucked into the air. To be honest, if it were just these two tanks, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. After all, the Rhino tanks were just cannon fodder, and the cost of building anti-aircraft crawlers was not high. However, in order to save marching time, each anti-aircraft tracked vehicle was filled with mobilization troops from the Wolf Group. Once something happens to the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, the mobilization soldiers inside will also be implicated. Those are all Wang Ling's men. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Just when Wang Ling was getting angry, the defensive buildings on the edge of the building forcibly changed their shooting targets and concentrated fire to bombard the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle that was gradually rising into the air. Although this anti-aircraft crawler vehicle is very maneuverable, it was sucked into the air by the magneto-electric tank and could not move or resist at all. In addition, its armor and health were very low. As a result, this group of anti-aircraft forces concentrated fire not long after. The anti-aircraft crawler vehicle was blown up, and the 5 conscripts it carried also died instantly. Hateful. Seeing this scene among other anti-aircraft crawler vehicles, Wang Ling gritted his teeth in anxiety. But now, he doesn't care too much at all, because the entire attacking team is still on this dangerous road section. Even because of the intrusion of the magneto-electric tanks, the scope of this dangerous road section has become larger, and all vehicles are still fully protected. It was dangerous, even the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle Wang Ling was riding was no exception. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. The Yuri base didn't care what they did. They even wanted this team to be wiped out. After killing the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, the nearby air defense forces began to focus on the Rhino tanks again. As for the target being blown up, the empty magneto-electric tank was not idle either. It quickly aimed at an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle and forcibly attached it to it. Damn it, you bastard! But when he saw this in the electronic video, Wang Ling was so anxious that he even wanted to get out of the car and kill the magneto-electric tank himself. Because this time, the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle it adsorbed was the one that Hu Ben was riding in. Of course, Wang Ling is not as close to Hu Ben as Sun Dehu and Erlu, but Hu Ben is his old comrade after all. Ever since he joined the battlefield, Hu Ben has been in the same base with him. Now that the army organization has changed, Hu Ben is even more his subordinate. As a captain, the relationship is even closer. Now, the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle Hu Ben is riding in is in danger, and something will happen to Hu Ben as well. Can Wang Ling not be anxious? However, it was useless no matter how anxious he was, because even if he got out of the car and attacked forcefully, he could not reach the magneto-electric tank on the mountain at all. He could only watch helplessly as the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle and Hu Ben got into trouble. In annoyance, Wang Ling was even prepared to lose one of his capable men. Whoosh! Swish! Boom! Miracles rarely happen on the battlefield, especially in this red alert world. Basically, when encountering danger, it is difficult for reinforcements to rescue them in time. But at this time, a miracle really happened. Just when Wang Ling was helpless and annoyed, two intruder fighter jets suddenly flew over the hilly area, rushing into the area unscrupulously and aiming at the absorbing anti-aircraft track. The car's magneto-electric tank dropped two missiles, destroying it instantly with a bang. After completing the bombing mission, the two invader fighter jets immediately turned around and began to return. However, deeper into the Yuri base, two Getter cannons and a Getter tank opened fire. As they flew out of the air defense range, at the same time, one was shot down, and only one returned safely. Fortunately, the peripheral air defense forces were focusing on the Rhino tanks. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the two invader fighter jets to even fly into this area, let alone successfully blow up the target. But in fact, it was such a coincidence, because the magneto-electric tank adsorbed the target and attracted the attention of the air defense force. Two invader fighter jets happened to fly over at this time and blew up a magneto-electric tank. This explosion helped Wang Ling a lot. The adsorbed anti-aircraft crawler vehicle fell down midway before it could float too high. Wang Ling's eyes lit up when he saw this. But he didn't have time to think too much now, and quickly ordered the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle to speed up with the attacking team, and soon they all passed through this dangerous zone. Boom! And just as they successfully broke through, the Rhino tank that was set on fire was also blown up. This Rhino tank really completed its cannon fodder mission and successfully attracted the firepower of those anti-aircraft forces. Otherwise, this matter would be really difficult to handle. After passing through this dangerous zone, Wang Ling sat in the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle, feeling constantly scared. This time's forced charge really felt like a gamble. Although it was extremely thrilling in the middle, the gamble still won in the end. The offensive team of the Wolf Group retained its vitality and successfully broke through the fire-blocked road section. Recalling what he had just experienced, Wang Ling couldn't help but feel a little sad. Unexpectedly, at the critical moment, the Allied invader fighter planes came. Previously, General Reagan refused to send troops to attack Yuri base on the pretext that this dangerous road section was difficult to pass, and only agreed to use intruder fighter planes to harass it. At that time, Wang Ling was quite dissatisfied with General Reagan's actions, but by coincidence, the two invader fighter planes came to harass him at the most critical moment and blew up the magneto tank that made Wang Ling's teeth itch. Rescued Hu Ben and his party. Of course, General Reagan would not be so kind as to come specifically to rescue the coalition forces. What's more, although the invader fighter planes are fast enough, it will take a while to reach this area by sailing. It is too late for a special rescue. Therefore, in the final analysis, this bombing was really just a coincidence, and the Allies were just doing it to harass. Based on this explosion, even the Allies must have made outstanding contributions to this offensive operation. Thinking of this, Wang Ling couldn't laugh or cry. Destroying a magneto-electric tank and rescuing an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle and 5 Tigers and Tigers, This actually had little impact on the overall battle situation, but Wang Ling was so protective of himself, and the grudges were clear, since he saved his subordinates and comrades in arms. The credit for this battle naturally goes to the Allies. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 619. Of course, Wang Ling was not serious enough to tell the Allies this idea, let alone get close to the Allies because of it. At best, he was no longer so angry about the Allied inaction in this battle. Indeed, the Allies have been using intruder fighter planes to harass, but after all, they have not sent any frontal offensive troops. For this reason, the Allies are very unjust. Although Huben was rescued by mistake, as mentioned before, Huben was not very useful in the fight against Yuri's base. If Wang Ling did not express his feelings, the Allies would not know what help they had. According to Wang Ling's idea, it would be fine if the Allies were confused and suffered a loss. In short, he and the attacking team would just remember the favor the Allies had done so that they would not go out to blame the Allies. After making up his mind, Wang Ling felt happy for a while. And then, he continued to point his finger at Yuri's base on the mountainside. Just wait for me. After passing through the most dangerous section of the road, the rest of the road was much safer. During this period, we also passed through an empty mine area, killed some Yuri guards, blew up a slave mine, and hung the liberated slaves directly. At the same place, the attacking team continued on their way. The road ahead was smooth and smooth. The attacking team maintained a constant speed and continued on the road for a while before arriving at the predetermined location. This place is very close to Yuri's base on the mountainside. There is only a relatively wide mountain road. With the charging speed of the attacking team, they can rush to Yuri's base in just a moment. If Yuri base wants to send troops to attack, or to wipe out this attacking team, it must pass through this road, unless it uses an air force that can ignore the terrain. After getting into position, the attacking team stopped directly under Wang Ling's order. All the mobilization troops got off the car and were ready to charge. However, they did not start charging immediately. Instead, they continued to wait for the Kirov airship. Bombing. When they were traveling at full speed, the 8 Kirov airships were not idle, and were always sailing slowly. The mountain roads in the hilly areas are rugged and difficult to travel, but as an air force, the Kirov airship can ignore these terrains, and at most it can change its flight altitude. With this convenience, after Wang Ling and the others were in place, the 8 Kirov airships almost approached the Yuri base on the mountainside. However, Wang Ling did not let them attack immediately. With the air defense power of Yuri base, even the 8 Kirov airships may not have the expected effect without careful calculation, and will only be destroyed by one shot down. Under Wang Ling's observation, it can be found that there are more than 10 Getter cannons in this mountainside Yuri base, irregularly distributed in the base, and there are more than 10 Getter tanks, or staying in tank bunkers, or wander around the base for patrolling. In addition, there are more than 10 laser UFOs hovering over the base, and the overall air defense force is very powerful. Of course, no matter how tight the defense is, there will always be some oversights. Wang Ling observed for a moment and found a location where the air defense force was relatively weak, so he ordered the 8 Kirov airships to make a large detour. It took half an hour to reach the designated airspace. Then, the order to attack was finally given. Under Wang Ling's deliberate arrangement, the 8 Kirov airships were separated by a distance and rushed towards Yuri's base almost side by side. The 8 gods of death were approaching slowly and menacingly. This posture was quite eye-catching in the electronic video. At this moment, not only Wang Ling was watching, but also inside the Holy City, General Li Wiki, even General Reagan, and even many officers and soldiers who had the authority to view the electronic map were all concentrating on observing the battle situation. The reputation of the Kirov airship, the god of death in the air, is well known among the coalition and allied forces. At this time, 8 ships came out and charged towards Yuri base. At this moment, many officers and soldiers were a little excited and maintained a strong mood of anticipation. Buzz buzz. But the 8 Kirov airships didn't care about that much at this moment. They were charging at Yuri's base. They had no intention of returning alive. Of course, not only the coalition and allied forces noticed these 8 Kirov airships, Yuri base also noticed that the entire base had a posture of being faced with a powerful enemy, and all the frigate tanks wandering inside were focused on. After entering that area, only a part of the laser UFOs in the sky were left to continue circling, while the rest were pushed forward to block them forcefully. Swish swish swish. Swish swish swish. Relying on their superior maneuverability, the dozen laser UFOs dispatched took the lead in approaching the Kirov airship. They aimed at the outermost ship and began to fire concentrated fire. Laser beams were raging, consuming the target airship to their heart's content. The blood volume of the boat. The reason why this Kirov airship is so terrifying is that it is called the god of death in the air. In addition to its super destructive power, its own armor and life force are very thick. Unable to defeat even one Kirov airship, despite being bombarded by laser beams, 8 Kirov airships finally approached the range of Yuri's base. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. At this time, the Get tanks that had been deployed in advance also began to fire. 7 Get tanks and 14 large-caliber Gatling machine guns rotated slowly. The power of the concentrated fire was no worse than that of the laser UFO. The target was bombarded. The blood volume of the airship is also slowly decreasing. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. After firing continuously for a period of time and knocking out half of the target airship's health, the firepower of this group of Getter tanks soared directly, reaching the 2nd level. The rate of fire suddenly accelerated, and the target airship's health volume also decreased at a faster rate. Finally, it was successfully shot down with a bang. At the same time, another Kirov airship that had been targeted by concentrated fire was also shot down at this time. They had just broken into Yuri's base, and 2 ships had already been killed in succession. If they followed their previous habit of only dispatching 3 ships at a time, it would be difficult to even touch the edge of Yuri's base. To be aborted in advance. Da-da-da. Ding ding ding. The power of Yuri base's air defense force is reflected here. The 7 Getter tanks immediately moved the target after killing the target airship, but they still maintained the original firepower level and focused on another kilo. After firing continuously for a period of time, the firepower surged up a level again, reaching the 3rd level of the fastest attack speed. The frequency of shooting was like a raging fire coming from the muzzle. Very scary. 7 Getter tanks with the 3rd level of firepower jointly bombarded each other. The power was really unmatched. The target airship's HP was rapidly reduced at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was more than 1.5 times more powerful than the laser UFO concentrated fire. Not long after the continuous fire attack, the 3rd Kirov airship fell with a loud bang. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 620. Hiss. What terrifying firepower! Why is the anti-aircraft firepower of Yuri base so strong? That Getter tank, are you crazy? Why is it so scary when it fires? Seeing this scene on the electronic map, the officers and soldiers in the Holy City area were startled. This is the first time they have seen the anti-aircraft firepower of Yuri's troops since the war began. Can they not be surprised? Of course, they were not the only ones who were surprised, but also the commanders of the 2 armies. In the Allied command post, General Reagan clenched his fists and stared at the Get tanks in full fire in the electronic video. He seemed thoughtful. During the joint meeting, Wang Ling said that the air defense force of Yuri base is very strong. I thought at the time that he was deliberately weakening the status of the Kirov airship so that we could give up that idea. Now that we see it, Wang Ling did not lie to us. This firepower is indeed too strong. The Kirov airship bombing Yuri's base is not the best choice. On the side, a deputy asked, since it is not the best choice, why do the coalition forces dispatch Kirov airships? General Reagan shook his head, perhaps they have their own ideas. Look to the side. Wang Ling has already led his team to the position. It's probably the same old routine, bombing first and then attacking. It's exactly what Wang Ling said. The anti-aircraft firepower of Yuri's troops is too strong. In the coalition command post, General Li Wiki also lamented, fortunately, 8 Kirov airships were built in advance. Otherwise, if there were only 3, I would not even be able to touch the edge of the base, right? Zhao Pingwang also nodded, indeed, I was wondering before, no matter how strong the air defense force of Yuri base can it be stronger than ours? But now I look at it, I am naive. Yuri troops, their air defense force is not the same type as ours, but it is indeed very tricky. If there are only a few Kirov airships, it is just a test for them, but Wang Ling is smart enough to prepare so much in advance. Rovitsky seemed a little confused, but, how useful are so many? You see, the anti-aircraft firepower of Yuri base is simply too strong. According to this trend, 8 Kirov airships may not be of any use. This time, General Li Wiki laughed, don't worry, Wang Ling is already in position. Compared to the Kirov airship, Wang Ling is probably the main force. This guy has more experience in attacking Yuri base than we do. Ding ding ding. Swish swish swish. In the Holy City area, while the officers and soldiers and even the commander were talking in surprise, beside Yuri's base on the mountainside, the Get tanks with full firepower were still firing like crazy, and the target airship's HP was also rapidly decreasing. Moreover, those laser UFOs were not idle either, emitting laser light as much as they wanted. According to this trend, the remaining 5 Kirov airships may not be able to make any achievements. But don't forget, Wang Ling has always been in remote real-time command. With this guy's gaming experience, he will not be so stupid as to let Kirov airship die. Just when the 4th Kirov airship was knocked out of half its health, these airships also officially broke into Yuri's base, and happened to be directly above the 7 Get tanks. Blow it up. Wang Ling, who has always been cunning, of course did not miss this opportunity. He directly ordered remotely, and the 5 Kirov airships temporarily stopped moving and threw huge bombs at the Getter tank group below. Choo choo choo. Choo choo choo. Boom. 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 Such an explosion would be very lively. The Getter tank itself has low armor and health, but the giant bomb of the Kirov airship is very destructive. It almost throws bombs above their heads. Due to the powerful destructive power, 7-1 Get tank exploded on a large scale on the spot. Even if it was lucky enough to escape the bomb directly above, it could not withstand the shockwave of 2 nearby bombs. All 7 Get tanks exploded under this violent bombing. Without these 7 Get tanks with full firepower, the pressure on the Kirov airship dropped sharply. Wang Ling immediately ordered it to move forward and forcefully break into Yuri's base. Of course, without these 7 Get tanks, the Kirov airship is not safe. There is still a large amount of air defense force inside the base. It's just that these air defense forces are fixed-point air defense. Except for laser UFOs, they can only shoot at air targets within a certain area. However, the Kirov airship broke into the Yuri base. Even if it had chosen the direction with the weakest air defense force, it would inevitably break into the fire zone of the Get tanks in other Get cannons and tank bunkers. In the next section during that time, 6 Getter cannons and 4 Getter tanks opened fire one after another. However, due to the limitations of the air defense range, these air defense forces were unable to concentrate their fire. Instead, they each selected a Kirov airship, which greatly reduced the efficiency. Taking advantage of this opportunity, a group of Kirov airships dispersed in the base against the increasingly fierce firepower, and each moved towards the target. What are their goals? Not tank factories and command posts, but virus snipers. Because this virus sniper is Wang Ling's biggest threat, killing the virus sniper in advance will make Wang Ling more confident when he attacks. In this Yuri base, there are currently only 4 virus snipers, distributed in 3 directions of the base. The 5 Kirov airships were allocated according to the remaining health and distance, and they rushed forward with all their heart. Using a Kirov airship to blow up virus snipers would inevitably feel like using an anti-aircraft gun to kill mosquitoes, but Wang Ling had to do such a ridiculous thing. Of course, in line with the principle of making the best use of everything, when these Kirov airships are moving, if they come directly above a main building, they will definitely drop 1 or 2 giant bombs and blow them up before continuing. Moving forward, the whole thing didn't waste much time, but it destroyed Yuri's base. During this period, the anti-aircraft firepower within Yuri's troops became more and more fierce. Kirov airships in 3 directions were blocked to varying degrees. The 2 airships with residual health were quickly shot down and blown up on the ground. Kill a bunch of Yuri recruits. But the remaining 3 Kirov airships were getting closer and closer to their respective targets. They fought hard with their increasingly lower HP and finally succeeded in approaching the target soon after, dropping several giant bombs. Choo choo choo. Boom. 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 The sound of the bomb falling was really like the scythe wielded by the god of death. The virus sniper was just a flesh and blood body, how could it withstand such a huge bomb bombing? 4 virus snipers were killed one after another in the next period of time. After completing the mission, 2 of the Kirov airships also ran out of life and were shot down by the anti-aircraft firepower of Yuri base. The last Kirov airship had already lost its health. Facing the entire base's air defense forces, it was a hopeless situation. But before it was shot down, the Kirov airship seemed to be having fun and dropped giant bombs indiscriminately nearby. All Yuri troops and buildings in the area were damaged, and more than 10 Yuri recruits were damaged. Several wild orcs, 2 psychic troops, and even 2 biochemical reactors were all destroyed, and even the surrounding gust tanks were damaged to varying degrees. After blowing up these, the Kirov airship targeted a mind control tower, but as soon as it dropped a bomb, it had already exhausted its health and fell from the sky. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 621. Whoosh. Boom. With its blood volume exhausted, the Kirov airship fell weakly in the air, seemingly unwilling to do so. It continued to rotate during the fall, and finally hit the mind control tower with a loud bang. Defense buildings such as the mind control tower are relatively strong. Together with the giant bomb dropped previously and the huge explosive power of the Kirov airship itself, it only blew up about 1/3 of the mind control tower's health. Then the engineers it was repaired in a hurry, and it can be said that it was basically harmless. However, with this explosion, the originally mighty Kirov airship army was officially declared wiped out. 8 Kirov airships and 8 death gods came out and stormed Yuri's base. In the end, they destroyed a total of 7 Get tanks, 4 virus snipers, nearly 40 other infantry units, and 5 biochemical reactors, a combat laboratory, and a tank bunker. These statistics seem to have caused a lot of damage to Yuri base, but in fact, this level of damage has not hurt Yuri base at all, and its combat effectiveness and defense are still very strong. Kirov airships are the most lethal weapons of the Allied forces and are often used in beheading operations. The Allies suffered heavy losses for this purpose. But now, the 8 major aerial deaths have only blown up these things. According to General Reagan at the Allied command post, this is really a failure and worthy of the name of aerial reapers. In the coalition command headquarters, General Lewicki and the three generals were relatively calm. Even after all the Kirov airships crashed, they were a little more hopeful. Because, after the bombing was completed, it was time for Wang Ling's offensive team to appear. Isn't that right? From the beginning, Wang Ling didn't expect those Kirov airships to do anything to Yuri's base. He just wanted all the virus snipers to be blown up. As long as there are no virus snipers in the Yuri base, Wang Ling will have no nemesis. As long as he doesn't seek his own death, there is nothing the Yuri base can do against him. Humph, Yuri base, it was a great fight. But this time, you are finished. Everyone, follow my orders and move forward. After sneering, Wang Ling waved his hand and led the attack team directly to start the assault. Of course, Yuri base cannot be attacked by force at all. Even without the virus snipers, the remaining defense forces must be dealt with carefully. Outside the firepower range of the outermost defensive buildings, Wang Ling temporarily stopped the attack team, and then he himself, as soon as he jumped to the front, he transformed into a soldier-level magnetic blast infantry, and began to attack the mind control tower on the edge from a distance. The elite combat soldiers are very strong, but their attack methods against buildings are a bit useless. They are not as fast as the magnetic blast infantry. The two types of soldiers can be flexibly changed. This is the reason why he can attack Yuri's base. The electromagnetic current of the 10-star King-level magnetic blast infantry is very strong, long-lasting, and full of destructive power. It continues to act on the mind control tower, constantly and rapidly consuming the building's health, and it will be completely consumed after a short time. There was an explosion. Later, Wang Ling targeted another mind control tower and was just about to continue to destroy it remotely, but at this time, the Yuri base had already reacted. There were more than a dozen Yuri recruits, 3 orcs, and 1 man on the spot. A psychic troop rushed over, trying to interfere with Wang Ling's attack. However, there were no virus snipers among these Yuri troops. Wang Ling had no fear at all, and even became a little unscrupulous. He stopped attacking the mind control tower, but instead transformed into an elite combat soldier. When these infantrymen broke into their shooting range, Wang Ling stopped attacking the mind control tower. After that, they opened fire directly. After several rounds of bursts of fire, all the incoming Yuri troops were wiped out, and there was no one enemy left. After taking care of these infantry, Wang Ling continued to transform into a magnetic blast infantry and attacked the mind control tower from a distance. But this time they only knocked out half of the mind control tower's health, but Yuri's troops responded again, including 2 latest Getter tanks, 5 tornado tanks, and even 7 laser UFOs hovering nearby. They all rushed over. Compared with the last offensive, the true appearance of Yuri's base this round is a bit more powerful, and it is obvious that they are aware of Wang Ling's threat. If Wang Ling is the only one of these armored forces, it will naturally be difficult for him to defeat the four-handed force with 2 fists, and the ground forces and air forces will not be able to take care of both. But don't forget, he is also assisted by the Wolf Group's offensive team. At the critical moment, Wang Ling stepped back a few meters to make way for the Apocalypse tanks. Under Wang Ling's order, the first 2 Apocalypse tanks took the initiative and launched missiles directly, bombarding the fastest laser UFO, successfully attracting the attention of this group of Yuri Air Force. They all began to focus on the 2 Apocalypse tanks. After attracting the firepower of the biggest threat, the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles at the rear took advantage of this opportunity and opened fire violently. The 2 sides were in a stalemate for a while. Wang Ling quickly transformed into an elite combat soldier and started shooting at the ground troops. 5-star Special Forces elite combat soldiers, their range, rate of fire, and power are abnormally strong. When those tanks failed to get close, Wang Ling raised his gun and killed 2 Get tanks and 2 tornado tanks. After the remaining 4 or 3 tornado tanks approached, 3 Rhino tanks opened fire first, attracting their attention. Then the Phantom tanks and the mobilization group opened fire collectively to support them. Coupled with Wang Ling's black guns, these three tornado tanks had not yet fired. Once you figure out what lineup of enemy forces you're facing, you've already lost everything. Afterwards, Wang Ling continued to transform into a king-level anti-aircraft infantry, aiming at the laser UFOs in the air. The firepower of his anti-aircraft infantry is equivalent to the total of 5 to 6 elite anti-aircraft tracked vehicles. Originally, there was a stalemate between the two sides in the air-to-ground battle, but with the addition of his powerful anti-aircraft firepower, the 7 laser UFOs, they were quickly knocked out of health and fell down one after another. In the end, they only lost half of the health of the first 2 Apocalypse tanks. In this blocking battle, Wang Ling's offensive team almost completely won. In addition to the lineup, Wang Ling's firepower played a decisive role. The successive changes of arms, specifically using restrained arms to deal with the enemy, made Yuri's defense forces unable to withstand it at all. Here you go. Of course, General Li Wiki and the 3 generals were watching the battle on the front line in the coalition command post in the Holy City. After seeing this round of battle, Rovitsky couldn't help but cheer. King Xiaoping smiled and said nothing, but his face was also full of joy. General Li Wiki said happily, "A small team leader who was not very impressive at the beginning has now become the trump card of the coalition. This is the combat effectiveness and enemy responsibility that a heroic unit should have. With such heroes in the coalition, great things can happen." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 622. When Wang Ling returned to the battlefield from the police dog training base, although he had achieved military exploits, after all, only the conscripts had reached the 10-star soldier king level, and the magnetic blast infantry was only a 1-star veteran. Apart from the fight with Chen Tong, the overall it's not too conspicuous. However, as Wang Ling accumulated military exploits, his military service level, rank and status continued to soar, until he has now become a hero-level unit in the entire army. During this period, General Li Wiki's evaluation of him could be said to be getting higher and higher. I'm afraid Wang Ling could not have imagined that he could receive such a level of praise. On the contrary, in the Allied camp command post, General Reagan gritted his teeth, slightly dissatisfied, and even a little jealous when he saw Wang Ling deal with Yuri base's counterattack so skillfully and exploded with powerful combat power. Indeed, now that the two armies are united, Wang Ling has become stronger, and it is of great benefit to the Allies at this stage. However, after all, the ideals of the coalition forces and the Allied forces are contradictory. This is pressure from Yuri to make them unite, but what happens after Yuri's threat is over? Such a powerful coalition hero made Reagan feel a little mixed. However, Wang Ling had no time to think too much now. After quickly eliminating the defense forces of Yuri base, he transformed into a magnetic blast infantry and continued to attack from a long distance. Under the bombardment of the thick electromagnetic current, the mind control tower, which had lost half of its health, was destroyed within a few moments. The defense force of Yuri base is mainly based on mind control, and this is also the biggest threat to the coalition offensive forces. After taking out the 2 mind control towers, only 2 Getter cannons were left at the intersection. With the firepower of the Wolf attack team, there was no threat at all. Under Wang Ling's order, the front row was dominated by Apocalypse tanks. The entire attacking team advanced slowly, and after reaching its firing range, they started shelling directly. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. After being bombarded, the 2 Gat cannons immediately began to fight back, and a total of 4 Gatling machine guns sprayed fire snakes. However, whether it is a Getter tank or a Getter cannon, the Gatling gun used will not do much damage to armored units unless the full firepower can be increased to the second or even third gear. To increase the firepower, the Getter cannon had to continue firing for a period of time to complete. Taking advantage of this time, the tanks of the Wolf Group's attack team fired one after another. Under the powerful destructive power, the two Getter cannons were stunned. The gun was disassembled when it failed to reach the second level of firepower. After taking out the blockers at the intersection, Wang Ling did not let the troops continue to attack. Instead, they stopped at the intersection, which was full of provocation. After being beaten at the door of their house, the Yuri base certainly would not stand by and watch them act recklessly. After all the buildings at the intersection were destroyed, a large number of troops in the base began to commotion, dividing into several groups intermittently and moving towards Wang Ling and the others. Come. The first group of Yuri guards were the hovering laser UFOs, and this time they all flew over at once. A second group followed, a total of 10 tornado tanks. The third group is the infantry team, with a variety of Yuri recruits, wild orcs and psychic troops, totaling more than 100. Taking up most of the remaining infantry in the base. Sending out such a large number of guards to attack intermittently at one time shows that Wang Ling's attack has angered the base. Well done, don't let anyone go. However, Wang Ling had already budgeted for it. Facing such a large number of Yuri guards, instead of being afraid, he was full of fighting spirit. His response method directly copied the previous method, using apocalypse tanks to attract firepower, and anti-aircraft crawler vehicles with full firepower. Wang Ling himself used elite combat soldiers to take the lead in cooperating with other tanks and mobilization troops to kill those Gale Force soldiers. The tanks immediately used anti-aircraft infantry, destroying all those laser UFOs. After going back and forth, Wang Ling has become very familiar with the conversion of arms. He can change into the army he wants to use with almost a thought, which is very convenient. Speaking of which, in this red alert world, the longer you stay, the more arms you switch to and the more advantages you have. Thinking back to when Wang Ling was still a new recruit, even daily training was difficult. At that time, did he ever think that one day he would be able to switch between several major arms and fight against Yuri's troops? Of course, after all, Yuri's troops dispatched too many troops this time, it was difficult for the attacking team to survive alone. In this confrontation, one Apocalypse tank and 2 Rhino tanks were also lost. However, the amount of losses was less than 1/10 of that of Yuri's troops. After 2 groups of Yuri troops were completely wiped out, a third group of belatedly arriving infantry troops finally came closer. However, to Wang Ling, these Yuri troops were just giving away experience. In this regard, he was not polite at all, and directly transformed into an elite combat soldier. With repeated bursts of fire, one person wiped out all the infantry in the third group, leaving no one for the other tanks and infantry of the attacking team. The annihilation of 3 groups of guards in succession has already reached the point of breaking out for this mountainside Yuri base. The base's defense strength has been drastically reduced, making it difficult to organize a decent attack. However, this is not what Wang Ling wants to see. His goal is to destroy the entire Yuri base. After the blocking battle was over, Wang Ling kept stopping. On the one hand, he commanded the tanks and infantry to storm the tank bunkers and Getter cannons not far away. On the other hand, he converted into magnetic blast infantry and specially selected the mind control tower to attack. The snake hit 7 inches. Under this targeted attack, large areas of the buildings on the periphery of Yuri's base were quickly lost, and the entire offensive team approached the inner command post area of the base. By now, the commander of the base finally thought that there was still a trump card in the base, so the 2 mind-controlled vehicles and the remaining magneto-electric tank at the rear of the base turned around after receiving the order, heading towards the attacking team. Although this Yuri base has been damaged, if the attack is directed indiscriminately, there is still a risk of the group being wiped out. Although these 3 Yuri tanks are not very eye-catching and their number is small, if they are not dealt with well, the entire attacking team, except perhaps Wang Ling, would have to be wiped out. Of course, Wang Ling was not in such a hurry that he noticed them coming and ordered the already excited attacking team to retreat urgently. The attacking team also obeyed Wang Ling's orders and hurriedly stopped the attack and turned back, leaving Wang Ling alone to go deep. This rogue style of play was quite annoying for the mind-controlled vehicles and magneto-electric tanks, but they had to charge forcefully under the command of the commander. As a result, they failed to contact other attacking teams, but they broke into Wang Ling's shooting range. The enemy is approaching, so why are you so polite? Hit it. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 623. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Boom. 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 In Yuri's troops, the cooperation of magneto-electric tanks and mind-controlled vehicles is very difficult for ordinary troops to deal with. It can even be said to be the nightmare and nemesis of ordinary troops. However, Wang Ling is not in this fan tao. The existence of his elite combat soldiers can even serve as the nemesis of magneto-electric tanks and mind-controlled vehicles. These 2 types of arms and 3 major tanks drove into Wang Ling's shooting range. Wang Ling didn't even bother to say hello, he just raised his gun and fired, destroying the magneto-electric tank in the blink of an eye. The mind control vehicle had higher armor and health, but it couldn't hold on for too long under the firepower of elite special forces soldiers. As soon as it touched Wang Ling's vicinity, everything exploded. The remaining powerful weapons in Yuri's base failed to cause even the slightest loss to the attacking team. This frightened the commander of the Yuri base on the mountainside. He hurriedly mobilized the remaining troops and guards in the base, and they all gathered together to kill Wang Ling by force regardless of the cost. However, these remaining troops did not pose any threat to Wang Ling at all. On the one hand, he called for the wolf attack team to return. On the other hand, he directly carried the enhanced version of the AK rifle and fired violently at anyone who entered his range. Not a single person or tank among Yuri's troops within range could survive, and they all became dead souls under his gun. During this period, the productivity building in Yuri base, the tank factory, was not idle either, and was still urgently producing tornado tanks. But the tragedy was that the tank factory happened to be within Wang Ling's shooting range. The tornado tanks had just been produced, and when they were driving out of the tank factory, they were shot several times by Wang Ling and exploded on the spot. During the fierce battle, the attacking team of the Wolf Group also came to Wang Ling's side and cooperated with Wang Ling to launch a fierce counterattack. In the previous blocking battle, most of the troop guards in this Yuri base have been killed. Now the remaining numbers are no longer scary. After an intermittent counterattack for a period of time, all the guards in the entire base have been annihilated. After losing these guards, the gate was forcibly broken, and the outer defensive buildings were destroyed. It can be said that half of this base has been destroyed. Of course, the remaining defensive buildings, mind control towers and getter cannons, as well as the tanks stationed in tank bunkers, still have resistance. However, these resistance forces were of no use under the firepower of the attacking team. Hit me. Following Wang Ling's order, the tanks, vehicles, and mobilization troops of the attacking team once again engaged in frantic dismantling, focusing their fire on the getter cannon and tank bunkers. Among this team, the Apocalypse tank is good at attacking fortifications. With its super high armor and life, as well as its powerful destructive power, any conventional troops would be frightened when they encounter it during a storm. What's more, there are also Rhino tanks and Phantom tanks to assist. Although the firepower of the mobilized troops was insufficient, it made up for this deficiency in quantity. With the combined efforts of several major arms, although the defensive buildings still had counter-attack power, they could not withstand them at all and were dismantled one after another. Wang Ling is still the same as before, specifically picking up the mind control tower in the base to attack. his attack speed alone is not slower than that of other troops in the attacking team. He can always attack before the attacking team reaches the control range of the mind control tower. Then he blew it up, and as a result, the entire attacking team was simply unscrupulous. After attacking continuously for a period of time, all the mind control towers were destroyed remotely by Wang Ling, and then Wang Ling simply joined the attacking team. Of course, the level of the magnetic blast infantry has reached the highest level, and Wang Ling does not have to compete with them for these experiences. He has just transformed into an elite combat soldier. After the attacking team blows up the tank bunker, he immediately kills those exposed. Just a tank. After such a strong attack for a while, the entire Yuri base and all the defensive buildings were dismantled. This battle has reached this level, and it can be said that the Yuri base on the mountainside is completely disabled. Go on, I will demolish all the buildings, leaving no one behind. However, Wang Ling still refused to give up and continued to issue storming orders. Under his order, the attacking team went crazy, pushing forward all the buildings within reach. The biochemical reactor exploded. Tank factory, explode. Mine detector, explode. Troop recycling bin, explode. Yuri's command post exploded. The entire attacking team was like the scythe of the god of death that passed by quickly, leaving almost no armor behind. The entire Yuri base was quickly eroded by it, and buildings of all sizes, including the command post, were all traversed. Push. During this process, Wang Ling has been responsible for cleaning up and picking up leaks. Every time the offensive team kills a Yuri building, several working soldiers will be exposed, but these soldiers will be shot and killed by Wang Ling immediately. Not a single soldier was spared. And as the last biochemical reactor exploded, the entire mountainside Yuri base was officially declared destroyed. In the Holy City war zone, there were originally 3 Yuri bases standing tall and threatening, but after successive battles, only one on the top of the mountain was left. Pretty. This is the second base, let us conquer it again. Oh. 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 Ha ha ha, it was a great beating. After the battle was won, the mobilization members in the attacking team were extremely excited. Even the officers and soldiers watching the battle in the eastern castle area showed happy expressions. Yuri had just rebelled and carried out several sneak attacks, destroying the coalition forces and allied bases. At that time, many officers and soldiers were somewhat afraid of Yuri's troops. However, after these successive battles, people realized that Yuri's troops were not invincible. Moreover, after cheering, many people looked at Wang Ling, but they had a very strange feeling in their hearts. Compared to Yuri's troops or even Yuri's base, this guy is more terrifying. Ha ha, you really didn't disappoint me. This guy Wang Ling won another big victory. In the command post of the coalition base, General Li Wiki smiled happily. Rovitsky also said happily, Wang Ling is simply the nemesis of Yuri's army. As long as he exists, Yuri's army will definitely be in bad luck. On the other hand, Prince Xiaoping was relatively calm. Ahem, are you so happy? Doesn't Wang Ling have enough military exploits? Has he created few miracles? Aren't you used to it yet? Why are you always so surprised? However, Rouski pushed him directly in the head and reprimanded him mercilessly, you guy, you are so pretending. After being pointed out, Xiaoping Wang giggled twice. Tisk tisk. Just when they were having fun, General Reagan's voice came over the radio, congratulations to General Li, your army was able to kill an entire Yuri base with its own strength. This achievement is really impressive. People are amazed.